the terrifying secret profession in murder.
The caller came out.
Hi, I'm Barbara Crampton from Chopping Mall, and you're listening to The Hysteria Continues.
Indeed you are, and welcome back to episode 117 of The Hysteria Continues. And this time we're going to get down and dirty in New York City with Maniac, the infamous early 80s slasher movie. And we're joined with a very special guest today, Greg Burkhart from Blumhouse. I think this is your choice, wasn't it, Greg?
It was, yes.
Yes. So how are you doing? You're joining us at not quite the witching hour, but quite a long time after the witching hour. It's 3 a.m., isn't it, or thereabouts in Los Angeles?
It is 3 a.m. and I haven't actually gone to bed yet, so it's all good.
Okay. Well, hopefully you won't nod off on us. Keep it fresh. But it's great to have you with us. And to say we are testing the Skype gods with this kind of truly transatlantic podcast with Los Angeles, Tennessee, Dublin, and Bristol. So who knows what will happen? But yeah, very pleased to have you with us, Greg.
Very pleased to be here. Thank you.
Great. Okay, and the rest of the crew. How are you, Erik?
I'm very good, thank you. It's a god-awful 11 a.m. here in Dublin. Oh,
Erik. Same here, actually. It's 10 past 11 in Bristol, sunny Bristol. And a little bit hungover, you might be shocked.
I'm not surprised. So you're recreating Emmanuel, just to Christelle.
Well, that chair was asking for it, so... yeah. Okay, and Nathan, how are you doing?
I'm very well. It's 8 minutes after 6.
Ooh, so that's painful, isn't it? And you were...
I don't think anyone can complain saying it's 8 minutes past 3 for Gregory.
No, that is true.
So stop your whinging.
Hey, you started it with, oh God, it's 11. No.
Nathan, tell us a little bit about you went to Days of the Dead, didn't you? Was it Atlanta?
Oh yes, that's why. Unfortunately, I missed the Suspiria.
You went last week, so you're not on the
episode.
next episode. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
And I'm very saddened about that, but that's okay. I'll record my thoughts. But no, the convention was fun. I met Camille Keaton and Elvira, and I had a very, very good time.
Excellent. Okay. Well, that's good to hear. And Joseph, how are you doing?
I'm quite well. Did you know that I'm a maniac on the floor?
We had heard. Yes.
And I'm sitting on the couch like I've never sat before.
I was wondering, is that what we've got playing out the show?
No, I didn't even think about that until this morning. I'm actually just playing out with the exact same, go into a showdown music. But
that's
I like that.
Yeah,
that
but
song.
that song is brilliant.
Yes,
really,
it is.
Yes. So, well, good to all be here. So, thanks for listeners for joining us. In time-honoured tradition, before we get into the main feature, we'll talk a little bit about what we've been watching recently. And as you're our special guest today, Greg, do you want to tell us, has anything been catching your eye?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I've been catching up after having a bit of a dry spell. I'm kind of ashamed being in the position and working where I do that I haven't seen as much recent material as I'd liked. But I finally got to see The Visit, which actually was quite good. I wasn't really sure what to expect, although I did call the twist about midway through the film, so I'm not sure if any of you caught it as early as that. I'm usually pretty good at catching the twist ending. But and then also, strangely enough, Goodnight Mommy, the I believe Austrian film, and that was that one. I caught the twist in about 5 minutes. But
You're not the only one.
Yeah,
Mommy's actually a daddy.
there you go.
No, is that it?
Oh, Erik.
Not quite, but although it was quite excellent, it was very atmospheric. It had a very creepy vibe to it. And The Visit was actually very excellent because I think the young leads were, I think they did a really good job. I think they were charismatic characters. And
apart from the guys rapping.
Yeah, he's not really that good. It's not his calling,
No.
and apparently nobody involved in the movie agrees with me on that because they have him doing it relentlessly. But they're really, I mean, when they're called upon to really, to deliver some drama and to sort of show their kind of emotional torment about their home situation, it actually was pretty moving. So I was surprised. I was pleasantly surprised.
Okay, because we talked about you've seen that, Nathan, haven't you?
Yes, I really loved it. Like Greg, I actually guessed the twist, and we watched it at Grant's not long ago, and he usually isn't that great at guessing twists, but he guessed it like earlier than I did when I watched it at the theater, and I was just like, well, he knows it now. So, I mean, we just kind of sat the rest of the movie until the twist got there. But he still really liked it, though. I mean, especially I'm not going to spoil anything, but the scene at the end in the bedroom that takes place in total darkness. Like, he was doing, I call it the fingers, because he puts his fingers up to his face and looks through them. Because it makes it a little less scary. So, yeah, that was fun.
They threw a cheap shock in there too, involving the hidden camera, which actually I'm ashamed to say made me jump. I usually don't jump at things like that, but
I'm awful about jumping. I jump all the time. Somebody came in the other day in the kitchen where I was at work, and I was just pouring a glass of water. They walked up and said, "Good morning," and I jumped and spilled the water.
Oh, Nathan.
I'm jumpy.
Well, that's good. And Erik, you've seen it, haven't you?
Yeah, I really liked it as well.
Yeah, 'cause I'm still waiting for it to come out in England.
Here we go again. I bought it on an import Blu-ray from the States.
Okay. Oh,
I actually sent it to Erik, so I'll vouch for that.
Yeah, so fair
Nathan
enough.
Sent it fair enough.
As a present, because I'm nice. He doesn't send you presents, obviously. So
No, okay. And Joseph, have you seen it yet? Because I'm probably the only one who hasn't seen it.
yeah,
I liked it as well. It's very predictable, and it's nothing new, but it's well crafted enough, and definitely a step up from a lot of Shyamalan's later efforts.
what? No.
Yeah. What? No. And maybe not that one, but yeah, it's pretty good. I liked it.
Cool. Okay. And anything else, Greg?
Not a recently seen, but an about to see. Blumhouse picked up The Witch, which I'm actually really excited to see, and I should be seeing that this week.
Yeah, it was funny. I was going to ask you if you'd seen that because I think it's sort of being a bit of an insider in your position at Blumhouse. So I just thought it would be, because that looks really good, doesn't it? It's been getting some really good buzz.
Yes, and it looks amazing. Even the trailer alone is extremely creepy and very well. It looks like a very beautifully shot film. So
I can't wait to see that.
I'm really excited about it.
Is it going to be getting a sort of cinema release in the States?
I believe so, at least in a limited way.
I'm looking at the Blumhouse website. It says opens in theaters February the 19th, which is next
okay. So
Friday.
So
I do think it is getting a wide release because I think they're releasing it through the Blumhouse Tilt distribution arm, which has a pretty wide reach nowadays.
Excellent. Okay. No, I was really looking forward to seeing that. So it'd be interesting to hear what you think. Do you want to tell us? Did you want to talk a little bit about what you do at Blumhouse? Because I know you're kind of a senior writer, aren't you, for the website?
I am, and I'm not quite a half a year into that gig. But if you recall, I might have mentioned earlier that I wrote for FearNet when that was around, and actually this is a very similar position. A senior writer, they sort of give me free rein to write about any kind of content that people would consider scary, and it can come from the real world, and it can come from the movies, and so I have a few different columns. One of the things that's the most popular is, I don't know if any of you guys heard of the term creepypasta, but that is basically doesn't involve any kind of noodles, but it is it's sort of web slang for an urban legend that gets shared online. So it's sort of the 21st century version of sort of a campfire tale. And there are a lot of really high-profile examples of it, one of which is the Slender Man legend, and that I'm sure you've probably heard around the web. And those are all they're just basically made-up stories that have sort of an element of reality to them that makes them very shareable and makes people wonder if maybe they're actually true or maybe partly true. And that's kind of my main beat. But of course, I also have a slasher column.
And where can people check out the website?
It is blumhouse.com, BLUMHOUSE.com. And we would welcome any and all takers, because we definitely want to get the word out there. I think it's becoming a very popular site, and I think we're giving the readers what they want, hopefully. But it's a great gig. It's the most fun job I've ever had.
Excellent.
Yeah, Greg, I've read a lot of your creepypasta stuff. It's really well written.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I love the old urban legend type stuff anyway. So this is kind of like the urban legends for I guess you'd say the technological age. So I like them a lot.
Exactly. Yeah. It's yeah. It's the old like the tales of the guy with the hook at on the car and stuff like that. It's sort of the modern version of that.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, thank you, Greg. I'm sure we'll hear a bit more about that later. But that's well. Thanks for filling us in, and looking forward to hearing all about The Witch soon. So, Joseph, how about you? What have you been watching?
The only thing I watched this week was Hellions. I watched that last night. It's from the director of Pontypool, and I did a little bit of research before watching this because I saw a little teaser on Netflix, and it had like 1 star, but the synopsis sounded good, and I did the research and found out it was from the director of Pontypool. So I was like, okay, I'll watch this, and I loved this film. It's one of the best I've seen in a long time, but it just seems like everywhere else it's getting like critically like lambasted, and I don't really understand why. It's it's beautifully shot and well constructed. The color palette is just phenomenal. Maybe the main color texture that they use throughout the film to kind of give it this otherworldly, dreamlike quality might get on someone's nerves, but I think it was just a really well done idea. I mean, what else can I say about it without spoiling it? It's it's suitably gory. It's weird. It has a lot of mix of I'd say Evil Dead and maybe David Cronenberg stuff. Even some Guillermo del Toro type stuff. And it's just really well constructed, well acted. Normally, I'd give a little bit of a plot synopsis, but I'm afraid I'd probably spoil it because some of it is a little predictable. But other than that, I don't know. I was just really taken with it. I can't recommend it enough. If you have Netflix, go check it out.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, I've not heard of that one, but I'll try and check it out if it's on the UK Netflix.
Cool.
Cool. Okay. You said it's just the one thing you'd watch, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm slogging through a 10-day work week, so I don't have a whole lot of time.
Fair enough. Okay. Okay. What about you, Nathan?
Well, I haven't watched anything new, but I did rewatch some old classics like Horror of Party Beach, which is quite a classic, I must say.
I imagine it is. I don't think I've ever seen it.
I love the scene where the sea monsters crash the girls' slumber party. And I actually watched the Mystery Science Theater version because I'm a big fan of that show. But I recommend Horror of Party Beach because, it's fun rocking teenagers from the 60s getting killed by sea monsters that look like they have a bunch of hot dogs in their mouths. So,
when you see like friendly.
This pair of women who sound almost exactly like Laverne and Shirley get attacked too at one point. So that was fun. I also have been watching an old classic called Rock and Roll Nightmare, which I highly, highly recommend. It's an amazing film. and
Is that tumbleweed I hear?
I know. I was about to say it sounds like there's a tumbleweed going through. It sounds like Erik just told a joke.
Hey, Nathan's bullying me. That's the whole.
Sorry, Erik. Justin always plays that tumbleweed sound.
I can do that if you want me to.
No. I'm good. But I mean, I've talked about Rock and Roll Nightmare before, but I just have to always bring up the amazing finale when Thor gets that giant '80s hair metal, hair, and battles the starfish that are being thrown onto him from off camera. So it's quite great.
Every day.
Yeah.
Be sure to check out the Riff Tracks version. It's a hoot.
Oh, and I will tell you this. This is one movie where you might not guess the twist because it's just so unbelievably outlandish.
Have you seen, you've had the pleasure, Greg?
I have. It is. It's there's a little pain as well as pleasure, but it's just hilarious.
I haven't seen it yet, and I know I need to watch it. So that would be my homework for next time.
Oh, how are you going to acquire it, Justin? I don't think it's out on DVD.
I've got the VHS.
No, you don't.
I do.
It's on DVD.
Yeah.
Oh, you'll have to buy the DVD then, Justin.
Eric's just trying to hoist Justin by his own petard.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Nathan. Is there anything else?
No, that's all I've been watching. The only other thing I watched last night was that new movie, The Martian, but that's not a horror movie. So.
Okay, cool. What about you, Erik?
Okay, well, I've only watched the one thing, and that was a 1981 Chopsaki movie called Naked Fist. I think it was released also as Firecracker. Have you seen it, Joseph?
Yes.
So it's kind of it's a very short 70-minute kung fu exploitation made in the Philippines, and it stars an actress called Gillian Kessner, who was also in Trick or Treats, which is still a slasher, one of the slashers I haven't seen. She's also in Raw Force, and she plays a karate expert who travels to Manila to find her missing sister. And she winds up getting involved in very sexy and exciting adventures. For starters, there's a love scene that goes on forever. It reminded me of the swirly bathtub scene in Mad Men, except in this case, these two lovers slowly take each other's clothes off with a flick knife. And then there's a brilliant scene where our main lady is chased by a gang of thugs, and with each encounter, she loses more and more clothing until she's just down to her knickers, and she's doing karate chops and high kicks and everything in just her panties, basically. So that's the level of movie making we're talking about here, but it's a lot of fun, and it has the funky electronic music from Shogun Assassin, which I always thought it's incredibly dated but incredibly catchy. So Naked Fist, a thumbs up from me. Not a horror movie, it's an action movie, and a very, very, very trashy one at that. And if you like boobies, that's 2 thumbs up if you like boobies.
Have you seen The Search for Weng Weng?
No.
Do you know the guy, the diminutive actor that was in For Your Height Only?
Yeah.
And that was all about the kind of that's the Philippine sort of action genre. So this guy from Australia goes over to Manila and tries to find out what happened to Weng Weng.
Oh.
Has anyone else seen that?
No.
The title, I got to see this.
Have you not heard of For Your Height Only?
I have, yeah. I have it on DVD, believe it or not.
Okay. Do you know, Joseph? Do you know about Weng Weng?
It sounds familiar, but I'm not overly familiar with it.
Is that the actor's name?
Yeah, I think so.
Is he the one? I could be wrong, but is he the one that's in that GIF that's being sent around where he's dancing?
Not sure.
I think that's the little guy from Island of Dr. Moreau.
Yeah, I'm thinking of something different then.
But he was kind of like an actor. He's about 3 foot tall, I think, and he was in that kind of the Bond sort of rip-off and a couple of films. And this it's a really good documentary from 2013. And this Australian goes and he ends up interviewing Imelda Marcos, not Imelda Marcos, yeah, Imelda Marcos, yeah. No, hold on, Imelda. Yeah, it was Imelda Marcos, wasn't it? I'm getting confused with the what's her name from Suspiria, but. But anyway, yeah,
Helena Marcos.
Helena Marcos, that's the one I'm thinking of. But
we're discussing that next week on the program. You better start doing your research.
I know. It's a bit late for that now. But yes, okay. Well, thank you, Erik. Is anything else?
I did. I kind of half watched Werewolf Woman because I wanted to get. Did you get the email I sent you, Justin?
I did. Do you want me to play that clip?
Because Nathan, you were asking me a few weeks ago about where does "you whore" come from, and this is where it comes from.
I hate you, you whore! You whore! Go fuck yourself!
There you go.
I have to see whatever.
Some classic potty. It's called Werewolf Woman, or sometimes known as Naked Werewolf Woman. And it's just basically potty-mouthed Italian possessed lady shouting obscenities at her family.
That is hilarious.
It's my favorite subgenre.
Werewolf
She's a bit of an Inga.
She is a bit of an Inga, isn't she? Yes. Because you've got a thing, haven't you, for those Italian movies like the Antichrist and stuff?
Yes, I love all those. Mainly for the scenes where they go all potty mouth.
Yeah.
They just make me laugh.
Fair enough. So, well, thank you, Erik.
I'm not as sophisticated as I look.
Okay, yeah, well, we've worked that one out. So, the only thing I've seen, I had the misfortune of watching, we were looking for Single White Female on Netflix, and they didn't have it, or they did, but it had to, not Netflix, on Amazon Prime, you had to pay for it. So we plumped for the semi-remake from 2011, The Roommate. Which I hadn't seen before, and we're just in the mood for something sort of trashy. Because we'd started watching, I think, Wake and Fright, which was like the Australian sort of nightmarish film about a school teacher gets caught out in the outback, and it was just getting too depressing, and there's going to be loads of kangaroo killing, so we bailed on that, and we thought we'd watch something trashy. But The Roommate is kind of one of those films that's so trashy, it's not trashy enough, it's kind of vapid, really, than sort of enjoyable, and it's just kind of like a really pale imitation of Single White Female. Has anyone seen that? I take it. I thought you would have, Nathan.
Is that the one with Cam Gigante, the blonde kid?
Yes. Yeah.
I think I saw that. It's like a Lifetime movie almost.
Pretty much, yeah. I think it was because it's supposed to be. It's got the old tradition of having like 50-year-olds playing college students. Because
it's the only way to go.
Yeah, Minka Kelly, who's plays the psycho, and she's 35 now, so she must have been knocking 30 when she made this.
What is she supposed to be? College, like 19 or something? Isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. So I mean, she's quite good in it, but it's kind of it just doesn't go far enough. It's not silly enough to be entertaining. It's just kind of like one of those films that sort of feels so kind of vapid that it's kind of almost disappears as soon as the credits roll. So not really much I recommend. But unfortunately, that's the only thing that I've watched this week, apart from, of course, our main feature, which is coming up in a second. So shall we get onto it? Shall we go for the main feature?
Maniac provides ultimate satisfaction to even the most hardened fans of horrific gore. This hair-raising film traces the grim steps of a maniac killer as he stalks New York City streets, randomly searching for his prey. After ritually murdering and graphically scalping his victims, he takes their hair and clothes to his lair, which he shares with his grotesque collection of mannequins, which he costumes with his grisly trophies. That's a pretty spot-on synopsis, but it pretty much nails all the pardon the pun, nails all the high points and the low points, but it does leave out one of the more horrifying elements of the film, and that is that the lovely Caroline Munro not only gives Joe Spinell, who plays the maniac, the time of day, but she actually goes out on 2 dates with him and is clearly smitten with this character. And that's probably the most horrifying thing about this film.
Well, he is super dreamy.
I knew it.
No, I'm only joking.
He's there's clearly in his little squalid apartment. There's no room for a shower or bathtub, and so therefore I think he just decides not to ever bathe. I mean, there's no indication that this man has ever taken a shower in at least the last 20 years. So, but he does have a few styling late 70s leisure suits, which is obviously what won over Caroline Munro. But that's the overview. My personal thoughts about Maniac, is that something you would want to go into next?
Yeah, please. It's because I mean, this is obviously your choice for the podcast.
Okay.
So, what kind of made you, why did you choose it, and what do you think about the film?
Well, my reason for choosing Maniac was that it was kind of a personal landmark for me, because it was the first horror movie that I actually managed to sneak into when I was underage. And it was released unrated, if I remember. So is one of those where, not unlike an R-rated film, if you could find an adult that could shepherd you in, if it was unrated, no one under 17 was admitted, regardless, of guardian or not. So, but when I was 15, they had a midnight revival screening of it in my town, and I knew one of the ticket takers at that theater from school. And so he snuck me in, but I remember it being so nasty and grimy and mean-spirited, and on top of that, the print was bad, so it made it seem even more. It had a forbidden quality about it. Now, when I watched it last night to talk about on the show, I realized that now it feels a lot more depressing than scary, but and not because it's necessarily badly made. I think it's competently made. But the character is a lot more pathetic than I realized, than truly horrifying. But back in the day, it was a major accomplishment for me to be able to get my butt in that theater. So that's why it's significant. And that's why I chose it.
Okay. Well, no, thank you. I mean, it's it's an interesting choice, isn't it? I mean, it's well, I'll talk a little bit more about it in a second. But let's hear from Nathan. What are your thoughts on Maniac?
Oh, I love Maniac.
Of course. Well, that's a surprise.
There could be a compilation of how many times it's like, let's hear from Nathan, and it's like, I love blah, blah,
The
blah.
only thing I've heard you say you dislike is things with spaceships in them.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that, but, no, I mean, Maniac's a really interesting movie. I think that, I thought that the actors did a really good job in it, especially Joe Spinell. I thought he was really good in the movie. And I kind of see where you're coming from, Greg, with the idea that he's actually a lot more pathetic than scary. Mm-hmm. But when I was a kid, I found him terrifying, especially the scene where he stalks the nurse in the subway. Mm-hmm. The scene where she's hiding in the bathroom stall from him. I mean, that stuff that terrified me as a kid. I thought it was really, really frightening. And I always thought it was strange that, she didn't take a ride home when she had the chance. I mean, I don't know if I'd want to go to this subway when I know that there's a serial killer stalking the city, especially that late at night. But it is a horror movie, so I mean, that's kind of, the characters do that kind of thing in movies anyway. I love the Showdown song. I actually think that we did a top 3 songs, and that was in my top 3. I remember picking that song. And one thing I wanted to say, because I know you brought up the oddness of her dating him, and was it you, Justin, that had the theory that she was maybe a lesbian?
Wasn't there something, I can't remember, there was something about that, wasn't there?
Yeah, but lesbians still wouldn't go out with Joe Spinell, would they?
Well, maybe she felt pity.
I think she didn't. I read somewhere, or it's ringing a bell now, that Carolyn Munro said that I think it was supposed to be, wasn't she her character meant to be a lesbian? But then again, it doesn't make any sense. Is she then attracted to Joe Spinell?
It's very vaguely hinted that she's very friendly with her models when she photographs them, but that's probably the only real indication.
The chicks are like that.
Let me. While we're talking, I'll look it up, see if I can find any more about that. But
but I mean, there's not a whole lot I can say. I mean, there's so many like iconic scenes in the film. The Tom Savini scene in the car. And one thing I have to bring up about this movie is the artwork, because I think the artwork is very iconic, because when I was a kid, that was one of the artworks that, made me want to rent the movie really badly. It and To All a Good Night. the artwork.
Was it the bulge in the man's pants made you want to rent it?
No.
Yes,
because he also had a knife and a scalp. So if I met up with him, I would get scalped.
Jersey little boy, Nathan.
Was I?
Yeah.
Erik, you whore. I can't do it like you though. But I love the tagline. I warned you not to go out tonight. And I'm like, And the woman whose scalp he's holding, she didn't heed that warning. That's why she got scalped. But anyway, that's my thoughts.
Indeed. I've just found, I did a quick search for the Carolyn Monroe lesbian Maniac.
Okay.
So I've always got these visions.
I'm sure you got some interesting results.
I know. Well, I've always got the visions at Google. Don't they have search terms? They've kind of like sort of ticker tape, don't they? Electronic ticker tape. So I wonder all the kind of strange search terms. I wonder if that one's coming up across the Google offices as I just typed it. But it's there's an interview with her, and she says, I have not played a lesbian really before, but it was only implied in Maniac as Anna Antonio, or whatever she pronounce that, and also this one by implication of the word or poetry, but sadly it was cut out. There were no kissing scenes, so I'm not quite sure that makes sense. But it sounds like there was that was the implication. But again, it still doesn't make any sense why she took to Joe Spinell. But there you go. So, but thank you.
I have to admit, right quick, I just love that in this movie she's playing an educated photographer, and then years later she plays a high school student in Slaughter High.
Yeah, many years later.
Yeah. Joseph, what about your thoughts on Maniac?
Yeah, like Erik, I typically don't find a lot of joy in movies where we know who the murderer is right off the bat. But Maniac is one of the few films that gets it right. I think Joe Spinell is just well cast here. He's like an even greasier version of Ron Jeremy, if that's what I saw.
That's very greasy.
Yeah, he's just constantly permeated and caked in sweat and grime and gristle. So he fits the role well. And watching it last night, like Greg and Nathan, I think. I don't think he's so much terrifying as he is pathetic. I get the sense that he doesn't really enjoy killing anyone because he's often just breaks down into near tears and blubbering after he's done it, or he's trying to justify it in his mind why he's doing it, and he just kind of breaks down mentally. No, it's a very well structured film. Parts of it I think are terrifying. The subway scene is really well done. The scene with Tom Savini making out with the girl in the car, and they turn on the headlights and he just jumps on the hood of the car with the shotgun. I think it's just really well directed and just well staged. Lots of great gore gags in the film. Let's see. One thing, watching it last night, I was always like, this was the rare case where I actually preferred the remake, but I think maybe they're on par now. Because I used to not have such a high regard for the film, but watching it over the last couple of days, I've really grown to appreciate it more. I mean, I always had it in my mind that it was just too depressing to find joy in, but I think there's a lot of joy in this film, even for its subject matter. I love the little kitschy stuff, like him going to the fashion shoots and then them playing that wonderful song, and just has that whole bygone New York feel to it, which is typically depressing, but here I don't know, it just seemed kind of, I don't know, for some reason it just seemed a little upbeat to me in some of the scenes, in spite of its grim subject matter. Like I said, Joe Spinell is perfectly cast here. I think he was a fairly good actor as well, certainly born for this type of role. But yeah, that's my thumbs way up for me. One of the better 80s slasher films from that era that features a murderer we know. Typically don't go in for that, but it's just really well done here. I'm sure I have a lot more to say, but yeah, thumbs way up for me.
Cool. Thank you, Joseph. What about you, Erik?
Yeah, well, I probably agree with Joseph there, because generally it's not a subgenre of the slasher I would go for as such. For Maniac, I would kind of have to be in the right mood to enjoy Maniac. It's not one like Friday the 13th or Eyeball or Pieces that you can just throw on any time and it'll entertain you. With Maniac, I have to be in the right mood to watch it. So I do like it. As you say, it's I suppose it's on the cusp of being quite depressing, but I think it's just trashy enough to not be like, you know, sitting down to watch Schindler's List or something. I do like that sleazy, low-budget ambience that he creates. It reminds me very much of Basket Case. The two films, I think, go hand in hand in terms of the ambience they create. Of course, they're quite different films in terms of the tone they're trying to generate. But I love the over-the-top gore, obviously. This is what attracted me to the film in the first place, back when I was a teenager, which was, 6 years ago. I love the the spectacular...
No, nothing. Carry on.
I love the spectacular finale involving the mannequins coming to life and dismembering Joe Spinell. That's a spoiler alert, I suppose. But one of my favourite things about the film is Bill Lustig in a tight white T-shirt. I suppose we all are in agreement on that. Of course, he plays the motel manager.
Yes.
And,
I knew it.
But what's particularly odd about that is that he's only 24. He looks a lot older.
God,
anyway,
almighty.
Sorry, I need to get Bill Lustig out of my head. Sorry. Yeah.
He was only 24?
Yes. And that's one of the things.
He was pushing 50.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I was going to say about the film is how accomplished it is for a 24-year-old. I mean, he'd made a couple of adult movies before this, but this was his first proper sort of stab at a mainstream, if you pardon the pun, at a sort of a mainstream, if you want to call it that, film. And I think he does a really good job. The parts I tend to dislike about the film are maybe the choppy, episodic nature of the plot. I mean, it really only has one main character, and that's Joe Spinell. And even like the top-billed co-star, Caroline Munro, has very little to do in the film. I don't think she appears until about the 40-minute mark. And even then, she only has about 10 minutes of screen time, and she doesn't really serve any purpose in the plot. And the film, I you know, we'll probably get into background here, but it's like something like The Evil Dead. It feels like it was put together over the course of a number of years, although I know that's not the case, because it has a kind of made-up feel, or it feels like bits are missing maybe. But as I said, you know, we're talking about a very low-budget film made by a 24-year-old director, and as such, it is really rather good. And, you know, as Joseph was saying, of all those slashers that focus on, I quote, every man who goes a bit nuts, things like Don't Go in the House, Christmas Evil, Don't Answer the Phone, Toolbox Murders, Maniac is my favourite of all that sort of, you know, small sub-genre, I suppose, as a slasher movie. Yeah, a thumbs up from me, but as I said, I need to be in the right mood to enjoy it.
Okay, well, thank you, Erik. I mean, my thoughts at this point is quite similar, really. It's not a film that I can watch very often. It's a film that I kind of admire, or kind of I can appreciate its place in the canon of slasher movies from the time, but it's not necessarily a film I enjoy particularly. I think it's, there's lots of bits in it which I enjoy. I mean, I think obviously the Tom Savini gore effects are fantastic, and I think the scene with the nurse in the subway, the chase scene, is pretty well accomplished, and also to a lesser degree the church, the chase scene through the graveyard at the end with Caroline Munro. But the rest of it's not a scary film. I don't find it scary, and it's not thrilling either. It's quite plodding, to be honest. A lot of it feels quite plodding, and you know, with kind of regular gore gags placed within. But but I appreciate it for its it's very much of its time, which is kind of like that kind of tail end of the 70s in New York City, that kind of the grindhouse, the film we talked about recently, Nightmares and Damaged Brain, does it kind of has a similar feel to it, that kind of almost nihilistic sort of feel, that it kind of almost not end of the world, but it feels like it's kind of end of an era type of filmmaking. I thought I really liked the opening scene on the beach, which I think it was meant to be like almost like a pastiche of Jaws, wasn't it? The kind of with Joe Spinell playing a blubbery shark, chasing the two teens on the beach, which very much kind of
blubbery and greasy. He's really not getting the love today, is he?
No, he's not. But but he works really well in this. I just find it's kind of, you know, all the films we mentioned, you know, Nightmares and Damaged Brain, Don't Go in the House, all those films have that similar feel. So there's definitely something in the air in 1980. And you had your popcorn slashers like Friday the 13th, and then you had films like Maniac, and they're not exactly chalk and cheese, but they are a very different feel to them, you know. And this, to me, I always feel it. I find the film quite depressing. I do find it a depressing film to watch, and that's probably why I haven't watched it for a long time. In fact, the last time I watched it with Stuart, and he said he'd never watch it again because he found it too much. And it's very rare.
It's very offensive to women as well, don't you think, Justin?
Well, it is what it is. It's a period piece, isn't it, as it were. But I mean, it's an exercise in kind of grim spectacle. It works really, really well. I say it's a film it's easier to respect than like, as far as I'm concerned. But I'm glad we're finally covering it. So any more thoughts to throw in the ring?
Well, you brought up something that I forgot to mention with the cemetery scene, because I actually love that scene where Carolyn Monroe is like in the cemetery with this guy and is slowly starting to realize, okay, I'm in the cemetery with a psychopath.
Well, if somebody invites you to the cemetery at night, and I know it's something that Justin does all the time with his goth friends, but
yeah, I mean, like that.
That's a kind of a warning sign.
And it's only their second date, which is I think he's taking her to a movie, and he's like, you mind if we stop by the cemetery real quick? And she's just rolling right along with him. So
it's a good thing that
ideal date for Justin.
It's a good thing the shovel was there.
Yes.
Yes. Going off one thing Greg said, he was kind of flabbergasted that Carolyn Monroe would go with someone like Joe Spinell. I kind of like the idea that you don't really get a sense of why she's doing this. I kind of see it as more of a, this is what, Frank's life could be like if he were on some kind of normal path. What he would be like in a I guess a semi-normal relationship. Of course, it all goes, tits up, before it has a chance to do anything. But I think it kind of gives the film, I don't know, it'd be hard to describe. It kind of gives it like maybe you're complacent because he's going to kill her or he's going to kill some other people. It kind of takes it verves a little bit to like, hey, what would happen if he didn't have these demons in his head and he just was in some kind of normal relationship. I think it's kind of a neat path to kind of segue into for even just a little bit. I kind of appreciated it this go around.
I agree. I kind of thought that she kind of brought out,
the better
side of him that might be normal.
Yeah.
But,
I think it's interesting that I think the remake actually kind of explores that more realistically, as far as there's some glimmer of hope that maybe, even though any chance at kind of a normal life would have, been doomed, the fact that the possibility of it seems a little bit more realistic in the remake, whereas
that and I could see some girl kind of falling for Elijah Wood, but not really Joe Spinell. Yeah.
Exactly, but even barring that, it's the fact that if you had put maybe a more classically handsome man in the Spinell role, there would have been so many warning signs. They've only had one date and he's already murdered one of her models, and he can't even let up for a second. And in the remake, it seems like he's trying as hard as his poor psyche will let him, but it's just it's sadder that way, I think, because there's a chance, but it's a very slim one.
Yeah, there's definitely some. I guess you call it subtext a little bit, maybe, of normalcy. I like that they explored that. I mean, if it were just nonstop, graphic violence and just misogyny through and through, which this film gets accused of a lot, but I think there's more to it than just misogyny. I appreciated that. So.
I did wonder if the whole thing with Carolyn Monroe was actually a kind of hallucination on his part, because
I've sometimes wondered that as well.
Yeah, maybe.
Because
that's an interesting point of view.
Yeah, it's just because obviously with the end, I mean, we talked about the end. I mean, if you see it, with Joe Spinell being murdered by the women, or coming back and beheading him and putting him. But what did your thoughts on the very end where the police come and find him in the? They look fairly nonplussed, don't they? Where they've just kind of just found this kind of serial killer's lair of all these kind of scalped, women's sort of scalps everywhere. But he obviously hallucinated the women killing him. But he's got a knife in his stomach, isn't he, or something in his stomach? But you don't see how that got there, do you? Because he wasn't stabbed by Carolyn Monroe, was he?
I would assume that he was hallucinating and he ended up stabbing himself, maybe just to put himself out of his own misery.
Mm.
Because he hallucinated his mother coming out of the grave earlier, so he's obviously spiraling down that sort of demented path there.
Yeah, it's kind of. I mean, it's wondering how much of it's kind of like that kind of fever dream. And again, it mirrors the kind of what happens in Nightmares in a Dabbish Brain, doesn't it? With the killer waking up and seeing the severed head coming alive in his bed.
Well, except there's no nanny boo boo scene in Maniac, sadly.
Sadly, yes.
Not to just segue completely into the remake or anything, because I'm sure if not me, maybe Nathan will eventually pick that film because it's quite good as well. But I think it's one of the rare remakes that takes the material, and while it does the same thing with it, it does something different. But it doesn't, what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't look down upon its source material. It kind of wants to accentuate what worked in the original Maniac and kind of elevate it. So I think that's one of the reasons why I appreciate the remake so much. They're kind of companion pieces, like one set in New York City. This is the New York version. This is the Los Angeles version. It's like they're both, kind of the same, but they both have a different feel. But they both kind of tackle that, the grimy and the misogyny, and they also tackle the semi-normalcy of both Frank characters. So I think, they play off well one another.
Have you seen the remake yet, Justin? I don't know if you had.
No, I have. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. No, I really liked it. I mean, it wasn't as depressing as this film. I didn't find, but it's still quite hard to watch, wasn't it, in places?
Well, yeah. Well, I won't go into. Yes, we'll probably cover it at some stage. But there is one particular scene that I found quite harrowing in the remake. But it is a very good film.
And like what was said earlier, I could easily see the female in the remake, being more attracted to Elijah Wood than, say, Carolyn Monroe would be to Joe Spinell, because Elijah Wood is dreamy.
Well, I can't understand why Carolyn Monroe didn't go for Bill Lustig in his tight white T-shirt.
She just didn't see
She
him.
probably did. Yeah, she didn't see him. That's it.
Plus, Elijah Wood doesn't look like he's been, rolling around in a vat of olive oil all night.
Greg, what were your thoughts on the remake? Have you seen it?
Yes, I did actually enjoy it a lot. It's more stylized. Obviously, it's built around a particular. I won't spoil it for everyone. It's built around a particular visual convention, but
which I think was brilliant. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think we can mention that it's the point of view, sort of. Yeah.
Yeah, it takes the idea, something that was criticized a lot about slasher movies in the day, that puts you in the point of view of the killer, so it makes you complicit in his actions, which, now that's actually, with the right person at the helm, I think that's actually it's an uncomfortable situation, but I think that they carried that off really well.
Yeah, this is a complete segue, but a few nights ago, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia did a similar gag with Danny DeVito's character, where you see the whole episode through his eyes, and it reminded me a little bit of the Maniac remake, because the only time you see Danny DeVito is when he's looking into a mirror. You either see his hands as he's going through this ridiculous scheme with his bar chums. So when I was watching that, I was like, this is a lot like the Maniac remake, so I enjoyed that. That's a segue for you.
I'm now picturing DeVito.
I can imagine Danny DeVito in the remake of Maniac.
The remake he's physically more. He sort of looks like a shrunken version, maybe, of Joe Spinell.
And what's funny is in Danny DeVito's character in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, his name is Frank. So there you go.
That's right.
There's some new action movie coming out. I don't remember the name of it now, but it's an action movie which the trailer was action packed, and it's done the same way the Maniac remake is. It's all point of view of the main character.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I can't remember the name of it, but I know what movie you're talking about.
Yeah.
I saw that. I don't remember the name either.
Is that one 999 or something, or triple?
No,
something?
it's like Hitman and his name or something like that. I know the guy's name is in the title, I think.
Steve. George.
Hitman Steve.
I would see a movie called Hitman Steve. That would be awesome.
Eric's going to make a movie called Soapy Steve.
Soapy Steve. So many memories. I don't know where he is now.
You've tacked a mannequin. You've tacked someone's scalp onto him somewhere.
He was inflatable.
Yeah.
But he was just arms and a head.
Okay.
Well, just
speaking
glossing
of
over
that
that
case.
No, Gregory's he's bullying Erik now.
Yes. Being bullied from all sides.
So, do we want to do a little bit of background? Who would?
Sure.
Gregory, have you got anything for us?
Yes, there's a great deal of background. I tried to narrow it down and start from the early days. The producers actually they took out an ad in Variety in 1979 announcing that the cameras were about to roll on Maniac, but they actually hadn't even cast the movie yet when they put the ad out, and that was actually pretty typical back in those days to run a large ad. You take out a large ad in Variety to trumpet your new project. And it would, you'd put some recognizable names in the ad to try to get investors and distributors interested in it. But you don't necessarily, none of those actors necessarily would have actually signed their contracts or anything yet. Maybe they're in talks or whatnot. But I saw the ad. It looks really cool. It's basically, the first one is like a big eye with a woman's face reflected in it. But it lists names like Daria Nicolodi, Susan Terrell, and Jason Miller as the stars, along with Joe Spinell. Obviously, none of whom show up in the film. So it's a pretty crass approach to hyping the film. But there was also another ad that they put out when they did have their cast locked in, and that ad had some artwork that made Joe Spinell look kind of like that Che Guevara T-shirt that a lot of people used to wear. So it's really, I looked at it as like, really? But the reason why Daria Nicolodi was apparently attached to the project initially was that I think they were looking to Italy for some of the investment, and as well as I think they had actually talked to Dario Argento at some point. And Daria Nicolodi was prepared to sign for it, but she wasn't finished doing Inferno for Argento, which ironically was set in New York at almost exactly, in the same kind of, well, it wasn't in the sort of 42nd Street sleazy area. It was, it was set in sort of the Upper East Side, but so that's why she was unable to commit to the project. I don't know. It would have been fantastic to see Susan Terrell and Jason Miller, from who's Father Karras in the Exorcist. Whatever roles they would have played, that would have been fantastic to see them. But alas, they did not come aboard. Another thing, I remember this very, very vividly, that Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel were not. To say that they were not fans of slasher movies would be probably the understatement of the century. But Gene Siskel, in particular, really hated this film. He hated Maniac with a passion. And their show Sneak Previews that they had on PBS, it was prior to when they went to CBS with Siskel and Ebert at the movies. When they had the PBS show, they had a segment called Dog of the Week. And it's where they talked about, each of them picked the worst movie they had seen since the last episode. And Gene picked Maniac for that week, and he said it was one of the few films he had actually walked out on. And apparently he had walked out of the movie precisely after Tom Savini's head explodes. But apparently from that point forward, he launched sort of a protest in his position as a film critic in Chicago to shut down part of the movie's advertising campaign. And they had a very unique, very grindhousey kind of way of promoting Maniac in major cities. Is in a theater that was going to be showing it, they'd put this little video kiosk outside of the movie theater, and it would show what's basically the trailer that you played at the beginning here, the red band trailer for the film. They would play that on a constant loop. And obviously in that trailer, it gives away all the money shots from the movie. I mean, including the end of the film. I mean, all the gory stuff is in there. So that calling people's attention to that on TV, that was a lot of outrage was generated. And I remember there was some footage of a women's group that was picketing the film, and they were painting, I think they were like painting whitewash or whatever over the poster, just so that nobody could even, set eyes on the poster. So
there's some extras on the Blue Underground Blu-ray of it where you see women, putting white paint over the poster. So I can see this from my office window, and it's like too upsetting.
yes, I think too, doesn't Blue Underground put they put scans of angry letters from people who were outraged by the film. I think that's in there somewhere.
I think it's kind of interesting how when this movie was released in 1980, New York was just this kind of a fairy tale cesspool looking thing, and people were upset at films like Maniac. And now New York is this kind of beautiful town, and people aren't as upset. So it's kind of like this contrast. Like they live in a time where everything's dirty and grimy, yet they hate dirty and grimy movies. Now they live in this this utopia, and they welcome these dirty, grimy movies with open arms. Now it's like there's this contrast that's kind of interesting to me.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, isn't it? Is there anything else, Greg?
One thing I wanted to say, and I don't mean to interrupt you, Greg. I was kind of going off of what you were just talking about with the women while putting paint on the posters and things. I always find it incredibly ironic that people protest movies or TV shows or whatever they're protesting, but it always seems to have the opposite effect of what they want, and more people want to know about this movie, and more people will go see it.
And not to go into a different segue, but talking of Siskel and Ebert, they're like a curious beast to me because not too much longer after Maniac was released, Gene Siskel raved and loved, something like, what was it? The name escapes me. It's the film with the posters, the guy watching the movie, and he's got the popcorn and the drink. Starts with an F.
Fade to Black.
Yeah, Fade to Black. He loved Fade to Black. They loved Halloween. And, not particularly Gene Siskel, but Roger Ebert softened a lot through the years on slasher films. He actually gave thumbs up to a lot of them, like I, Madman and Candyman and a few others, more slasher in nature. But back when at its height, I think maybe they were at their most, I guess you'd say, snobbiest, where they wanted all these art films to get recognition. But from 80 to 81 and even into 82, just slasher films were just killing it at the box office, no pun intended. They were just, the height of the zeitgeist, and I think that was just bothering them because a lot of the films that they liked weren't getting the recognition because of this craze. So I think maybe that's why they softened a little bit, because the craze eventually died down. But I don't know. I kind of get the feeling that a lot of their, disgust towards these films was just basically oversaturation, maybe.
That's a valid point. Yeah, ironically, I think their intent when they were really passionate about it to get people to stay away from these films was to a young person like myself watching them, rave or rant about them. I was just like, oh, I've got to see that. So
yeah, like Nathan said, it produces the opposite effect. And in this film and like Silent Night, Bloody Night, when the mothers were picketing it because it usurps the meaning of Christmas or whatever. It totally elicited the opposite effect, where people were like, "Ooh, this is going to be great. Let's go see this."
Right, a movie that might not otherwise be worthwhile suddenly develops this dangerous reputation.
Yeah,
well, that's what happened with the video nasty craze, isn't it? Just lots and lots of films that might necessarily be worth seeking out suddenly became a holy grail for everyone over here.
Oh no, absolutely, and sometimes it kind of backfires, isn't it? Like with the Nightmares in the Damaged Brain, the guy who got sent to prison for releasing the film in a slightly longer cut, but he was doing all the kind of guess the weight of a brain in a jar and things like that. And famously, I think it was Snuff, wasn't it? The Roberta Findlay movie that they kind of got people to come and protest the film, who were kind of staged to do it. They weren't actually, just to generate sort of publicity for it. So, I think it's Erik, is what you were saying, wasn't it? The more people, the more they protest, then the more people get interested in going to see something. It's a bit like there's that great scene, isn't there, in Polyester, isn't it, with Divine's husband runs a porno theatre. and all the people outside are protesting, and they're sort of down with this filth type thing.
Yes.
I think that quote, "Thou doth protest too much," I think that applies here because if people watch these films, and they watched them in the mindset that we watched them, they would find something to appreciate about them. I don't think Maniac is completely misogynistic. I mean, yeah, there are definitely tones of it. I mean, obviously, but you sit down and open your mind and watch. I think there's a lot more subtext than a lot of these films get credit for.
Cool. Is there anything else, Greg? Before
In the way of background, I think that's pretty much what I've got.
okay, thank you, Nathan. How about you?
I'm actually shocked that I actually have like at least one piece of background.
Cool.
I mean, you did. Eric kind of stole my Bill Lustig and the white T-shirt background,
Why?
but that's okay.
Oh, right. Sorry, he's a cameo.
Yeah, but
Well, if he wasn't a dreamy bear, I wouldn't have mentioned it.
I can't fault you there. But I will say that Tom Savini was the one that shot his own character in the face. So I know that.
Okay.
I did not know that.
Did you not know that?
They filmed it late at night, and they did not have the proper paperwork, so I think they used a real shotgun and everything.
Wow.
And they Tom Savini jumped on the hood and shot the head off, and then they packed up and got out of there quick.
I guess that makes sense because if you look at a lot of the background on the burning, he did a lot of the hand, like for Cropsy's hand, where in place of Lou David, a lot of the hand shots were Tom Savini when he was stabbing at his victims and stuff. So that would make sense.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thank you, Nathan. Joseph, how about you?
No, I don't have any. It's a long work week, so it was all I could do to throw the intro and everything together this week.
No worries.
Sorry.
Well, thank you. And what about you, Eric?
I have some, yes. Okay. As Gregory was saying, Carolyn Monroe was a late replacement for Daria Nicolodi, who was supposed to play Anna in the film, but she'd overrun on Inferno, so she came on board, and she brought with her husband at the time, Judd Hamilton, who also worked with her on Last Horror Film, and he came up with $75,000 to help them finish the film. The total budget in the end came to something like $350,000. There's helicopter shots of New York in the film, and they're actually outtakes from Inferno because Andy Garrone is the name of the producer. His father was working on Inferno. And also, when I went to look at the Inferno cast and crew on IMDb, both Bill Lustig and Andy Garrone from Maniac are credited with production management on that film, which I didn't see on any of the extras in the Blu-ray, so I don't know if that's correct or incorrect. But that's how they got the spectacular-ish helicopter shots for a very low-budget movie. They were just pilfered from that. Did you know that Bill Lustig is the nephew of the boxer Jake LaMotta, who was immortalized in the 1980 film Raging Bull? Now you do.
That would make sense too because Joe Spinell was in the original Rocky. I think he was in part 2 as well.
He's in Rocky 1 and 2, yeah, and in Godfather.
He makes Godfather. And he makes the joke like to Rocky, "Would you like to buy a condo?" And Rocky's like, "I never use them."
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
You had mentioned the Rocky connection there. Joe Spinell and Sylvester Stallone were actually pretty tight back in the 70s. In an interview with Spinell, he mentioned that he got Stallone to go around wearing a Maniac T-shirt when they were out still looking for a distributor. I would love to see a picture of that.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool.
There's a really interesting extra on the Maniac Blu-ray of Joe Spinell sitting with Steven Spielberg the night the Oscar nominations were announced for 1976, it would be, because Steven Spielberg was waiting to see if he's nominated for Best Director for Jaws. And obviously, I don't know why Joe Spinell was there, but he was. So there's this television footage and of course, he didn't get nominated. So Steven Spielberg has to kind of put on a brave face, but Joe Spinell starts swearing at the Academy. Spinell and Lustig wanted to make a film together, apparently called Sleigh Ride. Did you mention this, Greg? I can't remember.
No.
Oh, but they couldn't get I couldn't find out what Sleigh Ride was going to be about, but they couldn't get the financing, so they decided to downgrade the nature of the script to make a more modest film, and Maniac was the result. Frank Zito, who is the character name of the Maniac, named after Joe Zito, is that his name? The director of Friday the 13th Final Chapter and The Prowler, because he was good friends with Bill Lustig and Joe Spinell. As we said, it caused lots of controversy at the time. The LA Times refused to print the name of the film in its cinema listings. They used to say, contact the theatre for details of this film. They wouldn't mention the word Maniac. It reminded me of the time, Justin, I wouldn't really remember. I was a bit young, but when God Save the Queen by the Sex Pistols was in the charts, the BBC wouldn't refer to it. Yeah. It was rejected for a certificate in the UK and subsequently Ireland as well. So we never got to see Maniac over here, either in cinemas or on video, because it didn't, as far as I know, it didn't get released here until 2002 on Anchor Bay DVD when it was released with 58 seconds of cuts. Is that correct, Justin?
That sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah, so it never was on VHS over here. Going to a Showdown, the amazing song by Don Armando's Second Avenue Rumba Band, was produced by August Darnell, also known as Kid Creole from Kid Creole and the Coconuts.
Oh, really? Okay, that's a fun fact.
There's a fun fact for you. I think that's all I have. Oh, sorry, it was shot predominantly in November and December of 1979 and a bit of January 1980. So it was shot over the course of maybe 3 months.
Cool.
And then was it released early 81 in the States?
It was released 80 here, I believe.
Late 80, I want to say September of 80.
I think it was September.
Cool. Okay. Well, thank you, Erik. I mean, that's covered most of. We've got a couple of little bits where the nurse who gets chased in the subway was played by Kelly Piper, who was in Rawhead Rex.
That's
right. The wife.
Who is she in Rawhead Rex?
She's the wife.
The wife.
Dublin, oh Dublin.
Oh yes. Oh my God.
So
she sings the Dublin song.
Yeah.
Yes.
The film, I think, was pretty much inspired, or certainly, the Son and Sam murders, which with the killing of the lovers in the car with Tom Savini is listed as Disco Boy, I think, or Disco Man and Disco Woman. What else was there? I was trying to work out, because I saw that thing that Greg, you talked about the listing of people like Susan Tyrrell and Jason Miller, who was obviously famously in The Exorcist, and obviously Darian Acoldi, who talked about why she wasn't in the movie. It kind of seemed to quite a big jump from for William Lustig to go from like the kind of films like The Violation of Claudia, I think it's called, or his porno films in the sort of 77, 78, to making a film like this, and then getting major stars like, well, not major stars, but certainly well-known actors and actresses like Susan Tyrrell and Jason Miller to appear in the film, which it seemed that the budget was, it was kind of a guerrilla filmmaking, wasn't it? We talked
Jason Miller was a friend of Joe Spinell's. They'd been in The Ninth Configuration together.
Okay, well, that probably explains it. But I was wondering what character he would have played, and also Susan Tyrrell, who she would have played in the film, because
prostitute.
Possibly, yes.
No, Jason Miller would have been the prostitute.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, no, I thought that was kind of curious. Maybe the film was rewritten to maybe they were meant to be other major characters in there. One of the things I found in Variety, which I thought was quite interesting, it just talked about, because there was, going back to Siskel and Ebert, about why they hated horror films, slasher films so much, because they were kind of basically, there was a slasher film opening pretty much every week or every other week, or sometimes opening in 1 week. But in Variety, it was talking about in November 19th, 1980, it was saying that there were horror product and readiness numbers. And this is The Final Conflict, which obviously the Omen sequel, Wolfen, The Hand, Venom, Funhouse, Blood Beach, Dead and Buried, and then The Fright, which is that an AKA for My Bloody Valentine? The Fright, I think it might be. Then Evil Speak, Maniac, Full Moon High, The Unseen, and then a film called Easter Sunday. Does anyone have any ideas what that would have been?
I don't know.
Easter Sunday.
Wow, I don't know about that.
No, it's saying it was.
I wonder if it was a film that never got made, or if it never got completed, or something.
Well, it says horror product in readiness, so I'm kind of taking that means that films that are ready for release.
The Being from 1983 was.
Oh yeah, okay.
AKA Easter Sunday.
Okay.
Right.
The potato monster. Yeah.
Cool. And what's The Fright? Well, that was My Bloody Valentine, wasn't it?
AKA.
I know My Bloody Valentine was released with The Being on a double bill in '81. I think I remember seeing a newspaper clip of that. I'll have to check Google Images, but I do remember that vaguely.
Okay, cool. And lastly, I mean, obviously we talked a bit about Carolyn Munro, and obviously she went on to be reunited with Joe Spinell in the last horror film, which was much more light-hearted and silly. She also, it kind of reminded me, that whole fashion thing, it reminded me of her turning Jess Franco's Faceless, where she plays a model, doesn't she? But it has all that kind of fashionista kind of 80s stuff going on, which it has a bit of, obviously, with it's kind of much more low rent version of The Eyes of Laura Mars, which is kind of like another film.
Wasn't Joe Spinell? Sorry, go ahead.
No, go on.
No, I was just going to ask. Wasn't Joe Spinell? Wasn't their first film Carol Monroe and Joe Spinell? Wasn't it Star Crash? Didn't they appear in Star Crash together?
Yes.
Luigi David Hasselhoff.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
David Hasselhoff shooting laser beams out of his eyes, which is
it's not something you see every day.
It doesn't get any better than that.
Absolutely. Okay, well that is Maniac then. I think we've got quite a lot of feedback, have we, on the Facebook page?
Yeah, but there's a few. I don't think there's as much as the Psycho episode, but you may read some of these off?
Yeah, please do, and then we get on to some more feedback.
Vaughn Comier says, I got to see Maniac on 35mm in a theater with Bill Lustig in attendance. I've seen this film many times on VHS and DVD, but seeing it on the big screen and actually watching people walk out when it was playing was outstanding. Bill did a Q&A after and had a ton of great stories from this film and his others. It was one of my favorite times going to the theater. I still think this film holds up. Joe Spinell and Carolyn Munro work great together, even though they don't really work as a couple. Kind of like Erik and Justin, with Erik being Spinell and Justin being Munro.
I can see that.
I'm Munro.
Let's see, Rob Rob Doyle says, wow, two classics in a row. A great sleazy performance from Joe Spinell, who I always will remember as Mr. Gazzo in Rocky. Memorably, he asked Rocky if he wants to invest in condominiums, only to be told by Rocky that he never uses them. Yeah, I've mentioned that.
Deja vu.
Yeah. Anyway, back to Maniac. How the hell does someone who looks like Frank Zito get off with Carol Monroe? In a Joe Spinell screenplay, that's where. Some great gore effects and a pre-nose job Savini, who I'm sure you've mentioned, is the guy in the car that gets his head blown off. Yes, we have. And I love the gritty, grimy look of late 70s, early 80s Brooklyn. Let's see. Scott Pliskin says, the second of the Joe Spinell, Carolyn Munro trilogy, Star Crash being the first, and the last horror film being the last. Their scenes in Maniac are completely out of whack with the rest of the movie. Spinell might look like a creep, but his craziness in this movie doesn't feel as real as Nathan's guy Elijah Wood was in the remake. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. Miles Hamer says, claustrophobic, tense, dirty, nasty, and base. It's not big or clever, but I do really quite like it. Unlike, say, the similarly sleazy Nightmares in a Damaged Brain, this has an air of professionalism, polish, and craft that the aforementioned film lacks entirely. The Elijah Wood starring remake is surprisingly effective and at times incredibly difficult to watch. A film that's good at what it does, even if what it does isn't necessarily good. 6/10 for both. Let's see. Dave Rendoni says, saw it on Laserdisc at a friend's house in high school. I know VHS seems to be the preferred format for the genre, but did any of you 4 dudes, or 5 today, with attitude ever get into Laserdiscs? I had bought a few, but I never watched them.
I was too poor at the height of the Laserdisc. I was a student, so no.
Yeah, no.
I bought a few
I was too poor too.
Yeah, I bought a few way after the fact, just for, collector's sake, but I never actually watched them. What about you, Greg?
Those things were really pricey, but yeah, if I remember correctly, some of my all-time favorites I did try to plunk down the cash to get them, but yeah, they were expensive compared to DVDs.
Yeah. Let's see. Kevin Moore says, I don't want to ruffle any feathers here, but I actually prefer the 2012 remake. I don't feel like I need a shower straight after it. And the very thought of the ever-awesome Carolyn Munro having any interest in Spinell must be pure wish fulfillment. It's still a damned effective film, though, that makes your skin crawl like this does. Let's see. Bob Hartshorn says, I first saw Maniac on a VHS rental back in 1983. Almost all of Tom Savini's gore had been cut out, and what was left underwhelmed me enough to dismiss it every time it crossed my radar of conversation. Until now, that is. I rewatched Maniac uncut on Blu-ray very recently, and it seemed a long way from the indistinct bag of sleazy garbage I originally perceived it to be, leaving me to believe it can now take its proud place alongside Headless Eyes, Driller Killer, and Closet Cousin Don't Go Into the House in the sub-genre known as existential slice and dice. This time out, I found it an engagingly low-key affair with exceptionally well-directed and edited set pieces, not least the opening beach sequence and the very suspenseful chase in the subway involving the ill-fated nurse. Kudos also to some impressive bird's-eye view shots of New York City, remarkably accomplished for such a low-budget feature, and Erik talked about that a little bit, and Jeff Chataway's excellent mood-enhancing music score. Joe Spinell's performance, for the most part, is well-controlled and very fine indeed, and even though his relationship with Carolyn Monroe's character does stretch credibility somewhat, it's still very well handled and adds a welcome ray of light relief between the sweaty, soul-searching angst and exploding foam latex heads. The hallucinatory Grand Guignol finale is good value too, even if I'm still not too sure who called the cops. All in all, a well above average slasher from the slasher's perspective grit flick that's light years away from the mixed bag MTV aesthetics of 2012's remake. But maybe I'll get the chance to reassess that one at some point too. That's oh boy, I hate pronouncing these names. Jesper Bachman Anderson, I guess that's not too hard. Fantastic performance by Spinell, great effects by Savini, amazing score. Can't wait to hear about Erik's fantasies about Spinell.
No, none. No, he's too greasy and horrible and pock-faced and ugh.
Erik.
Oh, Erik.
What did he ever say about you?
He said my willy was small, and that's not true.
Okay. Steve Symington says, I don't know what it is about Joe Spinell and Carol Monroe. Boy, people are just harping on this one.
Yeah.
Possibly getting it on that I think is hot, but I do. God help me.
That's creepy.
Yeah. Oh. Mike Alishan says, Spinell always makes me feel so dirty. Every time I watch Maniac or the last horror film, I feel like I have to go and take a hot bath. Let's see. Sam Hain says, sweaty, sleazy, gory, uncomfortable to watch, and downbeat. Maniac is certainly not a fun, in quotation marks, slasher film, but I'm a sucker for anything shot in New York in the 70s and the early 80s that shows the grimy, darker side of life and stirs up some controversy whilst doing it. Maniac and Cruising double bill anyone. P.S. What's with the slideshow above? I don't know. That's just a completely different question. Sorry. Let's see. Just two more. Mike Gallagher says, what does Grant think of this film? I haven't seen Grant in a while. Nathan, what does he think? We watched it at his house, didn't we?
I think we did. If I'm remembering correctly, he wasn't a huge fan. I think he's kind of the same boat as Joseph and Erik, where if he knows who the killer is for the whole movie and the movie kind of follows the killer as the main character, he's not as interested in those kind of films. But, I mean, I don't think he disliked it. He just, kind of middle of the road for him.
I haven't seen him in a while. I'll have to go visit him or something. But anyway, Michael Ferrari finally says, Spinell bulge. There is no substitute.
Ooh.
One thing
there
I've
is.
got to... well, thank you for everyone who fed back. We'll come back on some feedback in a second. But did we mention the sequel to Maniac, or the mooted sequel, Mr. Robbie?
Mr. Robbie. No, we haven't mentioned it yet.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, because have you seen? I remember seeing the.
I've seen the 7-minute promo reel. Yeah, I think that's all that exists, isn't it?
Because
Yes,
it was a remake, wasn't it, of the film, the William Shatner Psycho film, wasn't it, from the early 70s, about the children's entertainer killing bad parents.
Well, that's the premise of Mr. Robbie. Yeah, he's a
Well, there's the William Shatner. Have you ever seen that film? What's it called?
No. I'll have a look. keep talking and I'll look it up.
Yeah, there's I can't. I've never seen it. It's but yeah, it's supposed to be.
Star Trek 3: The Search for Spock.
No, it's not that one.
Okay, hang on.
It's a hell of a thing when Spock died.
Have you found it yet?
No, he has quite a large filmography. It's from the 70s, you said, is it?
1973 or something, I think. It's quite.
Go Ask Alice? No.
No. I'm not sure if it's the one
Dark
he shot
Street.
in Esperanto. Is it Esperanto that?
That was Incubus, I think, or The Incubus.
Was it?
Impulse?
Okay. Impulse, that's the one. Yeah, I think it's Impulse.
Okay.
Yeah. So that would be interesting. But obviously, Joseph Burnell sadly died before. I think they just got the money together to make it, and he sadly passed away before they were able to do that. So, but I thought we just should mention that. But what we'll do now, we'll play How to Get in Touch with the Show, and we'll be back in a minute with some more feedback.
Be sure to search for and like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at THC_podcast. Our voicemail is 858-233-9281. And you can email us directly at the.hysteria.continues@gmail.com.
Yes, so please do get in contact with the show. While we were just having a quick loo break, which obviously through the magic of editing you wouldn't have heard, but Greg,
I don't think anyone wants to hear a loo break.
Cat flushing the toilet. Greg, you told us you'd been to somewhere very famous and
famous film location.
Yes,
I have indeed been to a world famous film location. I have been to the one and only Lake Tenkiller in Oklahoma.
Wow.
And
Nathan, are you still conscious?
Man, I nearly fainted. Like, I'm so envious right now.
I'm glad I remembered to mention this, but my it's about maybe a little less than a 2-hour drive from Tulsa, which is where I used to live for quite a while in Oklahoma. And my dad, he worked for the Army Corps of Engineers out of Tulsa, and he took me to Lake Tenkiller, which is a reservoir. And there's a Tenkiller Dam and all that stuff there, and he was doing a survey of the dam that the Corps of Engineers had built back in, I think, in the 50s or over that time. And I'm not 100% sure, but I think the legend that they talk about in the movie is pretty much bullshit. It's
much like the movie itself.
Yeah, very much like the movie.
What?
Sorry, Nathan.
We're going to cover it again, and this is your attitude?
Look, we've got some serious talking, you and me, Nathan.
You and me got to talk.
Serious problems.
If I remember in the movie, they talk about some legend of some native maiden who drowned in the lake or whatever and haunts the lake. And nobody ever claimed that. I think they made that up for the film. But Tenkiller is actually the name of the Cherokee family that owned the land where they built that dam, and I believe they either rented or sold it, leased or sold it to the government. For a very large amount of money. So no ghosts that I'm aware of. But wow. and there is in fact a gore, and it is actually very near that area. So
I want to visit there and take photos with Tor, Leslie, and Jana.
Reenact some of the classic dialogue.
Yes. Because I actually had a great idea for that film, but I mean, they went a different direction.
They obviously didn't.
I respect the direction they went with it. My idea was slightly different, but your
idea was an idea, whereas theirs wasn't. That was the difference.
But if their intent was to make Lake Tenkiller seem like just sort of this grimy, mosquito-ridden sort of hellhole, then I guess they achieved that. But actually, I remember it as being very pretty around there. Good fishing. It's quite a tourist area. There are nice cabins and hotels around there.
I think you just made Nathan's day.
Well, I've always wanted to do a sequel to Terror at Tenkiller, so one day.
Road trip.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you for that travelogue. That's very exciting for all of our listeners, I'm sure. So,
sure.
What about feedback? What have we got? Who's got some? Erik?
Okay, I've got one here, yeah?
Yeah.
I've got a very short one, which is not true. Hi, guys. Just wondering if you would ever consider doing a zombie movie episode. If you did, I would like to know what your guys' picks would be. And that's from Robert Ciardello.
Okay.
So zombie movies, well, you mentioned last week Living Dead at the Manchester Morgue. Or is it next week you mentioned that? I can't remember.
It's next week, yeah.
Oh, it's next week. Oops. I've just preempted your recently seen. I would also like to do it's not, I don't know if you'd call it a zombie movie, The Beyond. Lucio Fulci's The Beyond is one of my favorites. Nightmare City. Italian ones I tend to drift towards. I love
Would you consider House by the Cemetery a zombie movie? Because it's kind of a zombie slasher.
It is kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I would say so.
I would go with
that movie. Oh.
I would definitely have just go with the obvious Return of the Living Dead.
Oh yeah, what's a great movie and Reanimator.
Yes.
Sure.
Gregory, what would you choose as your favorite zombie movies?
Favorite zombie movie that let's see, be it slasher or not, I would have to say Dawn of the Dead. But yeah, if there needs to be a slasher angle,
I don't think there does. No.
Okay, but Dawn of the Dead, the original, my all-time favorite zombie movie. But House of the Cemetery is a really good choice too, because that's actually a genuinely creepy film.
I love Evil Dead is a zombie movie. Would we call that a zombie movie?
They wouldn't, but I would.
I thought it was more of a demon movie.
Yeah, true. It's one of my favorites.
Same concept, I'd say.
Has elements.
Demons are much more scary than zombies.
Yeah.
I'd rather face zombies than the Evil Dead.
True.
Fair enough.
Justin?
I'm like you. I like my Italian zombie movies, so I think for a fun time it would probably be either Nightmare City, although that's obviously not really a zombie movie, or it kind of quasi is, or Burial Ground.
Yes, Burial Ground, definitely.
But
I would also have to throw in Horror of the Zombies, the Ghost Galleon.
Oh yes.
Oh yes, that's really good.
Trashy, trashy.
But
cool.
It's so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all those Templar zombie movies were great.
I love them.
Excellent. Okay, well, was that the whole email?
That was the whole email. Yep.
Wow. Okay, Nathan, do you have anything?
No.
No. Okay, Joseph, you don't have anything, do you?
Nope.
No. Okay, I've got one here from Jenny, and it says, "Hi guys, it's Jenny from the block. Don't bother with the last name. I don't really care about it, so it's okay. Just to let you know, I finally watched 1980s Maniac, knowing it's the next to be analysed. To be honest, I'm usually not a big fan of slasher movies that are focusing on a killer's life and motives. That's why I've waited so long to watch it. I prefer the victim's point of view, like in most of the films, but Maniac surprised me. I think Joe Spinell did a good job as a creepy, somewhat childish killer. And strange enough, a few years ago I had a dream, or rather a nightmare, in which the action was a bit like this movie. So with that in mind, I have two questions for you, misters. Have you ever had nightmares that were slasher-esque? I had some as a teenager. One was similar to Friday the 13th. They were really terrifying, but I also thought they were great inspirations for my writing. So, has anyone had a slasher-esque nightmare?
Yes, I have. I had a dream once. I had a dream once. I was being chased by Mrs. Voorhees around a pound shop in my hometown of Kilkenny. So a pound shop is I don't know if you get them in the States, but
like a dollar store.
Yeah, dollar. Do you get dollar stores or something like that?
Yeah, like Dollar General, Dollar Tree, stuff like that.
Yeah, well, just it's all hash that costs €1 or £1 or whatever. So anyway, Mrs. Voorhees was chasing me around that, and nobody would help me.
Did she get you in the end?
I don't think she did. No, but it was very, very scary.
They're terrifying.
Yeah.
So, anyone else? Has anyone else had a slasher-esque dream?
I've never had Go ahead.
Oh, when I was much younger, I remember being chased by sort of a faceless character who did have a knife. It wasn't a movie character, but it felt very real, and it probably would have made a good movie.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. No, it's an interesting question. I can't remember actually any slasher-esque nightmares. I've had some zombie ones, or kind of ends of the world ones, but not slasher ones. I don't think.
I've had a lot of slasher dreams. I guess because I don't know. I don't know. I just had a lot of slasher movie dreams when I was a kid. Go figure. I guess just all the ones I watched when I was that young.
Yeah.
My mom had one, and I will still remember it. Or she would explain it the next day because I had her watch like several horror movies with me when I was a kid. And she dreamed like later that night that she was being chased across my grandmother's roof, the roof of her house, by this killer who was dressed up half like Michael Myers and half like Jason Voorhees. So he was like half and half, and was chasing her across this roof. And apparently she was like struggling, kicking and stuff, and she was doing that in her sleep. And my dad got a little bruised up because she was kicking and punching him in her sleep.
Very good, very good. What about you, Joseph?
Well, most of the dreams I've had, it's typically just being stalked by a monster or something like Rawhead Rex. Or when I was a kid, I had a dream that I was playing hide and seek with neighborhood kids, and I was the one counting while everyone else hid. And I'd peek up to look and see if I could see where people were hiding. And there was one of the girls was like just kind of in plain sight. She had her back to me, but she was giggling. And when I got to 10, I said, ready or not, here I come. She turned around and she was a werewolf. And then she just like popped up right in front of me. And I woke up from that. But I've mentioned this to Nathan, and I don't know if I've ever mentioned on the show, but I constantly suffer from sleep paralysis. So I'm always seeing visions of people like hovering over me, like getting right up in my face. And one time, not too long ago, but a couple months ago, I was laying in bed and I was having an episode of that. And there was a guy really tall wearing all black, and he had a knife, and he was just standing like pointing the knife at me, and he kept tilting his head, and when every few seconds he'd go ha 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 ha. And then, so I typically know when I'm in that state, so I try to keep my eyes closed so I don't see anything. But this is the one instance where I actually opened my eyes and I saw that, so I closed my eyes and just kind of tried to let it pass. But I remember that one very, very coherently.
That's great.
I agree with you because, I mean, I haven't suffered from sleep paralysis as often as you have, but I have suffered from it. And the first time it happens, it's terrifying. But after that, I mean, it's still really scary, but at least you kind of know what's happening. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you just try to convince yourself it's not really here, go back to sleep. But it's hard, though, because it's scary.
Yeah.
I once had a dream that I was being chased by this kind of hideous sort of.
Oh, here we go.
What?
Go on, say it. This episode, so he has to get one in.
I once had a dream that a hamburger was eating me.
Go on, finish your sentence, Justin. It'll be hilarious.
You spoilt it now.
Yeah. Good, I'm glad I did.
Yeah. Well, it's hideous harpy in this ginger fright wig and screaming, "I want to be free!" And I woke up and all the glass in the house had shattered.
Yeah,
it was terrifying.
That's probably from you being drunk the night before.
Yeah.
I don't touch a drop. In fact, actually, it's Valentine's Day today, isn't it? And do you know what my gift was for my beloved?
14 bottles of vodka.
No, it's one bottle of whiskey actually.
All right. So I knew it would be alcohol.
But I won't be drinking tonight. I don't think. I think I drank enough last night. So,
are you going to watch like a horror movie together on Valentine's Day?
Yeah, we're going to watch the Flesh and Blood show.
I love the Flesh and Blood show.
Good one.
I'm going to go with the obvious, My Bloody Valentine.
Yeah,
I will be watching that at some point today.
My girlfriend wants to see that, so I think that may. I don't know if that's the date night we had in mind, but.
Honey, you're going to love this.
It's great. You'll love it.
Excellent. The last thing, Jenny, also, another question was also, if you're in a slasher film, what would you like to be? The serial killer, the final boy, or one of the victims? So...
Not one of the victims.
No.
Yeah, I don't want to die.
I guess the final boy...
If I could kill Justin in a movie, I'd quite like that. So I'd like to be the killer.
Oh, Eric.
I will say, I'll put.
But
it
what do you
this
expect
way.
me to say after the way you've just dissed Toya again?
Again, too.
117 episodes, Eric. Let it go.
I'm not going to let it go.
I would say that probably in a movie realm, I'd want to be the survivor. But if we're talking like, say, that new Friday the 13th game, like if I play that game, I'm playing as Jason.
Cool. Actually, I've got a question for Gregory. Toya or Susie?
Good question.
Wow. Loaded question. I'm not actually, I must confess, I'm not that familiar with much of Toya's output.
You're not alone.
I do remember.
Shot at
I
you.
do remember the first I'd seen of her was in a concert film, which I believe is called Erg.
Yeah.
And it has a lot of great punk and new wave acts in it, and some that are quite famous and some not so famous. And that was my first exposure to Toya. But I have been a Susie fan for a long time.
Oh, well, there you go. Thank you. What do you think?
I liked Toya's performance in the film.
Thank you.
So
very diplomatic, Greg. I think that was a very, very measured response. So well done.
Have you been watching Top of the Pops 1981, Justin?
I have.
Lots of Toya recently.
Yeah. Well, it's a little window of opportunity for her, isn't it?
Shut it.
But Gregory, what would you rather be, the killer or the victim or the final boy?
I think that I think the killer, because of the sequel potential. Regardless of the survivor, we generally find out in the sequel doesn't live too long if they even make it to the sequel, and there's a lot of staying power if you're the killer. He always manages to come back, so that would be my choice.
Good answer. Yeah. I'd quite like to do. I'd like to have that kind of dramatic scene like Dana Kimmel in the back of the police car at the end of Friday 13th Part 3, and doing a guppy mouth.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah,
that would be good. I'd quite like to do that. So possibly the final boy or girl at the end of the movie. So, and Jenny finishes her email by saying, "This is it for now. I just want to thank you for all the good work as usual. And you're always in my mind when I hear a big gasp, and that makes me smile, or eat a chunky Kit Kat with passion, or watch a very cheap and unloved slasher that only one of you would adore, Nathan. And finally, when I think about an amazing slasher documentary book that I still have to buy, you'll probably all recognise yourself somewhere. Have good times and take care until next episode." That's from Jenny. So thank you, Jenny on the block. And all that leaves now is Erik's big joke of the week.
Okay, don't get too excited.
It's my joke of the week. It's so freaking fantastic.
Did you know that Maniac was originally going to be set in a small town in one of the southern states, and the theme song was going to be called "Going to a Hoedown"?
God.
There's just make that up. Erik, was that just made up? Did you just make that up?
I did kind of like in the last 20 minutes. Yeah.
God.
Did how do you think Maniac would have fared if it was set in the South?
I'd wager that Frank might actually be still out there to this day if his killings were in the South.
I think the collective IQ of the women in the South would probably fall for someone like Frank.
How awful.
Ooh.
I would say that I think that Tarot Tinkular kind of matches in a southern way the ferocity of Maniac.
Shut up.
It does.
And the fact that
it's very intense
from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Well, that was Maniac, and leaves us just to say thank you again to Greg for joining us today. Thank you for choosing Maniac, and everyone should go and check out Greg's work on blumhouse.com. So thanks for coming along, Greg. And it's probably is it almost 5 o'clock in the morning where you are now?
It is coming up on 5 a.m., yes.
Wow, okay.
What a trooper.
Off to bed.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have missed it for the world. I appreciate you guys, and happy 5th anniversary to the show as well.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we will be back next time with an episode we've already recorded, so that's why it's all going to be a little bit out of whack.
Except for me.
Except for Nathan, but you're going to record something for it, aren't you? But we're going to be covering Dario Argento's Suspiria next time on the show, so join us in a couple of weeks' time. And then after that, it's the second part of Nathan's World of Pain.
Yes, the double bill from hell.
No, it's going to be the double bill from, like,
Heaven.
Sweetest Place in Heaven. The land of
Well,
drops of heaven.
It's too
like
bad
going to
heaven
the
doesn't
land
exist.
It's like going to the land of chocolate.
A euphemism.
That does sound rather like a euphemism, doesn't it?
How dare you? You made my dog growl.
Right, okay. Well, enjoy the rest of your Sundays. Well, it's still your Saturday night, isn't it, in Los Angeles? But the rest of your weekends then, and we'll see you next time on The Hysteria Continues. So say goodbye to the good people.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye, good
Bye.
people.
We're going to a showdown now.
Did you go to bed at all, Justin?
Yes.
Or were you too busy doing Emmanuel poses all night?